Hello again, beautiful friends. It's been a minute, sort of. Probably not really. I've posted little things here and there, but it's been a minute since I've sat down and really unpacked some things. It's mindful and intentional just because I often find that it's great to sit and reflect and absorb. I know that in these times of instant gratification and time is money, etc., it can be very easy to want to constantly share. I mean, for me at least, I don't know. I observe a lot. I see a lot, and bleeding heart that I am as an outside observer. Like it's very strange. I find it strange to connect with large groups of people, if that makes sense. Like I'm very fortunate for my friends that I have, but for whatever reason, like so much of like big friend group dynamics and whatnot. I seem to be more of like a one-on-one kind of person, if that makes sense. And so in like the friend dynamic groups, yeah, I don't know. Or perhaps I just haven't necessarily found my right friend groups. Who knows? I can typically, like, I have my own friends, but actually, funnily enough, I was doing some math and it is about 60% of my life I've been in romantic relationships, which is actually kind of wild, to be completely honest with you. And at this point, I am very much single and just absolutely loving that, but also trying to be, of service as I'm able. So, in that reflection, I guess I should say, I have struggled to integrate with significant others' friends groups. But in retrospect and reflection, I kind of perhaps see how that is. I struggled to people with groups that would claim that they are free thinkers. So then I come in and I'm like, oh, you guys are my people. And then we find out that it's actually that they more often than not just want substantiation of their particular echo chamber. There we go. That's how we do what we do and how what we say is so important. You can go as old school like abracadabra. Um, that I speak, I create. If you want to go like the more Christian route, in the beginning there was the word. There is just even the power of intention and how we say what we say, framing things. Um, the use of English language is a great example. For anybody that speaks anything outside of English, English is really one of the only languages where everything is such a possessive pronoun. So, like, for example, in other languages, you wouldn't necessarily say you did so and so or you did such and such. It might be more like there was an accident and so ended up doing this. So, like for example, breaking a vase. You, if it were Spanish, you wouldn't necessarily say, "Oh, my name Yolanda. Yolanda broke the vase." It would be something more like the lines of Yolanda bumped into the table and the vase was broken. There was an accident. So we have this weird possessive like usage. And it's interesting because I think that whether we realize it or not, it can potentially be slightly inflammatory because then, like when we're trying to have accountability or maybe even explain to people how we are experiencing them, because people have their own struggles of guilt and shame because of how certain people feel about confrontation or feel when wronged, etc. Things just go haywire. The dynamics of peopling, right? Sheesh, I just dove right in, didn't I? It's all strange, but I have a topic. I'm trying to be so much better about this because I wish I could explain it if it's not apparent. I am constantly like, I'm an Aquarius sun. I don't know if you follow astrology. And what is very interesting to me is that a lot of people would say, oh, I don't believe in astrology. And no disrespect, I feel like you wouldn't say you don't believe in mathematics, and you wouldn't say that you don't believe in Spanish. You would say you don't speak the language, that you don't understand the principles. So in those particular instances, it's just kind of like astrology. Every civilization that has existed at this point has kind of charted the stars in certain ways. I mean, even the Christians, Epiphanies, and well, Epiphany actually finding the three wise men charting the stars to find baby Jesus. 1 Corinthians 12 actually talks about how spirit will be put onto all of God's children. But as we've talked about, we all know that I am really hype about my faith and the word religion. Like, that's the closest word that we can use, right? Because words, and it's just very, very interesting. So the topic today, by the way, is going to be agree to disagree, because it's just so beautiful. Like I mentioned, being an Aquarius sun, we're kind of odd. We're known for being stubborn. We're one of the cardinal signs, as in, we stand on what we stand on. And I have been perceived in certain dynamics as being very close-minded. And I lost the point in regards to even. Oh, actually, I remember now. I just had to keep going with it. I had to go with flow. I had to trust the process, and I didn't, and that's what happened. Um, so I can oftentimes just be perceived as like very closed-minded or opinionated, because as much as I talked about, the one-on-one dynamics, bites me in the butt, because a lot of times people can't step outside of their singular narrative, and these have been the types of energies and dynamics that I can attract. Then I only get that first perspective. So I'm learning to find more collective ways, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So I can be perceived as like very stubborn and very close-minded, which I think is so interesting. And I'm not going to say that that's not incorrect. I would say it's potentially misunderstood. So a lot of times, because I can see things just so meta, if that makes sense, the only way I can describe it is that whenever my brain encounters something, I can almost kind of create a model in my head, like a 3D holographic model. So, like iceberg. So, like all of a sudden, I can visually in my mind's eye picture an iceberg. And this isn't like the most incredibly useful thing, but I give that example because of the fact that I not only am a visual thinker, but I conceptualize. I can conceptualize things. Like, I have an internal 3D printer of the brain that that allows me to see the pros and cons and multiple aspects of things. So I, for whatever reason, like I was hit by a car when I was 14, amongst other things. I actually had an asthma attack when I was very young, and was without consciousness, without oxygen for a very long time. Actually declared legally brain dead for a bit. And that's just one of many things. And depending on different belief structures and what have you, it's very interesting. Like, if you're more of a person of faith, you have like the passions of the Christ, and I'm not saying it's the stigmata or anything, but then like Saint Therese and like John of the Cross, suffering. Suffering tends to be a common thing among those that are God touched, so to speak, spirited. And I would never try to propose to tell anybody that, oh, that's your greatest gift, find purpose in the pain. But I know for me, amongst other things, just finding purpose in pain has been what has helped me to just constantly seek understanding back to where I was going. I can be perceived as being very stubborn because of how I see things. But oftentimes, I would say it's misunderstood, because it's more that I see things strangely. So I get caught up on someone being so stubborn about, like, their own particular point. Like, they don't even necessarily realize that they're being stubborn, and I'm trying to perhaps show them. And you can't necessarily, you're being stubborn, but it is a very fine line between somebody claiming that their truth is like the most truthy truth and the only truth, and educating, empowering, what have you. And I'm working on that all of the time, I tell you, because my ego, what is my place to tell somebody they're wrong? Because isn't that technically what I'm doing? Even in trying to perhaps introduce something that maybe they weren't aware of. So, unfortunately, in certain past dynamics, I've like failed epically in how I go about that. I would say, I mean, I actually believe everything happens as it's meant to. So even if maybe I no longer connect with the person, it was as it's supposed to be. So in those particular instances, I could be perceived as stubborn, because then I'm just, for whatever reason, I can get caught trying to kind of show them and maybe not just being like, no, you are not considering any other points. Like, you are being incredibly stubborn and close-minded right now, which in all honesty would probably be so much better, because instead of like the going back and forth and me thinking I'm being like awful and I don't want to hurt their feelings and what have you, it then like escalates like so much worse. So part of the learning, and yeah, in that, sorry, the way that my mind works, I'm always like 17 steps, and that's why I get distracted, which is where part of that segue had started with the slow groups. I get distracted a lot. And to be clear, the only reason that there's the whole narcissism thing, which again, agree to disagree if you want. I'm starting to think of narcissism truly like everything should be a spectrum, to be completely honest with you, because everything is interchangeable. And we have to stop identifying certain things as like only good or only bad and yada yada. Because of the fact that everything is interchangeable. Just the ways that we change, hopefully, if we're doing it right, is we're growing and evolving and learning new things. Excuse me. My throat is so dry. Because we are different and we're changing, and it's just not always the same thing every single day. And we should be open to that. And they agree to disagree, because where I was even going to start in the very beginning, right before I jumped off, I was going to say just even being perceived as stubborn or like writing so hard for my points. I absolutely was going to start this video with, I have had so many instances recently to where it's so ironic because the last video that I posted was called Correct Me If I'm Wrong. And I tell you, it's not like that was like a specific cry to the universe. It wasn't a lamentation. But again, be careful how you say what you say, because we're constantly creating. Because, oh man, did the universe choose to correct me being wrong. As I have had such amazing encounters and experiences just meeting new friends. And as I continue to unmask and just challenge myself to say the strange things that I'm thinking and observing, but like in the most, I don't even want to say calm, because it's not about the tone or the energy per se, but just pragmatic, just straight to the point. If it's not apparent, because in the ways that I talk, I get so distracted. I had once been accused of having flowery speech, and I see it. I do. I think it's because I understand that just because something isn't necessarily cutting to me, or it doesn't sound or feel like it could be cutting, that I don't think it would be. So then, like, I try to soften it, because I've been perceived by so many people in so many ways as being very abrupt, brash, cutting, just all sorts of things. And agree to disagree. Because part of it, like, we're doing people such a disservice, and I'm one of them, to be completely honest with you, just even in the ways that I couldn't speak directly. Like, let's say that I observed someone doing something that, not that I would ever again try to like control or change anybody, but let's say someone was listening to music and they were telling me they struggle with like mental health issues, and because that's a big one for me, like friends, lovers, music being so important to me, and how we music, I understand that it's like a diet and programming. So if someone is perhaps struggling, but then like they're listening to dark music, angry music, I will point that out to them. And there's nothing wrong with that, because everything is energy. It's like taking any other kind of stimulant or supplement. And in having those dialogues, depending at the place that they're at, then, we can have the conversations. And again, the defending of the energies and how that can escalate. It's very interesting. I've talked about the Myers-Briggs personality types testing, which I cannot recommend enough that everybody learn about. Or if all else fails, if you would be so kind, just read up on mine, INFJ. Because of the fact that we are essentially like canaries and cannoli. I almost said cannolis. Apparently I might need a cannoli. We are canaries in the coal mine, but it has to do with energy. And what's very interesting to me is that the people are these days, it's like, oh, it's so woo-woo wonky to talk about energy, but science is substantiating these things. i.e., if you talk negatively to water and freeze it, the patterns, if you talk negatively to plants as they're growing, how that can affect the plants. And so it's just wild to me. And essentially, INFJs, because we have an externalized feeling, it's we are able to just pick up on other energies. So I think I understand why sometimes even I like my alone time. I love getting to engage with people, but I need to be around people that can emotionally regulate, that can kind of take accountability, that are not just, again, there's nothing wrong with being so caught up in your own experience, but, as like the be all end all. But isn't that like part of the social contract? Like, if you want to incorporate other people into your experience, don't you want to necessarily be mindful? And I get it. We all want to be loved. We all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. But we also need to be loving. Like, it's it's wild to me, as I grow and I learn just some of these things, because I don't want to. Again, it's very important to be mindful of how we speak, but I observe so many structures that are normalized as like incredibly abusive and harmful, and we don't even realize it. And at this point in my journey, it's kind of like, how much do I want to unpack? Because I'm not necessarily angry about things, but I also don't want to have people like freak out in their echo chambers, but just like waste and the waste that goes into these types of things. But being corrected when I'm wrong. Um, so I can be very anti-capitalist and consumerist sometimes, but I actually had a fantastic experience purchasing a new car, and actually got some vindication in that. You have heard me speak about how I don't necessarily care for a lot of the media and the mainstream. And there is a very famous female artist, and she has so many fans, and I do not care for her. I think she is a poor example of feminism. I think she is a poor example of a humanitarian. I think she is a giant bully. And I actually met somebody today who, and again, don't believe everything you hear, but it was just in me being me, challenging myself to perhaps have an uncomfortable conversation because of the way that the conversation just naturally evolved in the town that I'm in. Their music is very, very important to a lot of people. You cannot throw a piece of change without it bouncing off someone who's probably trying to aspire to be a musician, and that is, it can be beautiful. But perhaps that's even what's caused some of my issue, is kind of getting behind the curtain and really getting to know these people. And as much as it's not regional, I am a transplant from here, and I know people that have also tried to make it in music from where I'm from, even. And it's, again, the contents of our hearts. It's not just that specifically. I'm digressing. So, it came about in the conversation, and he said, "Oh my gosh, I know exactly." And this was the one of the people. I'm not going to out anybody because, yeah, it's not my place. So the gentleman that I was speaking with, he goes, "Oh my gosh," he goes, "No, I get what you're saying exactly, because I just gone on a lamentation how art began as a civil protest. Artists had to find a way to protest against the government policies, etc., and not necessarily be institutionalized or demonized or stigmatized. So they created their art. That's why allegory is a thing. That way you could have plausible deniability, so to speak. So you couldn't necessarily say, oh, that's for sure. No, it's a representation, it's a caricature. And again, who gets to decide what is art? The art is in the object of the beholder. So I just made a comment how, for me, it's just disheartening how a lot of times, people will pretty much, oh, I had a fart, there's a breakup, and I'm feeling something, and I want everybody to substantiate my ego. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing and simplifying, and it is not that simple, but hopefully you can understand what I'm speaking to. Just the fact that people aren't trying to change the world. Even the people that are doing slight things with some of their platforms, they're not dismantling systems and creating more equality for other people. So there's still a lot of unhealthy ego involved as I see it. There's still a caste system, it's still bullying. It can be done better, kinder, and more loving, as can everything. And it's interesting how, in trying to speak on that, sometimes I get perceived as like being bitter or a thief of joy or what have you, which is just bananas to me because it's like the ultimate act of unconditional love. Like, are you kidding me? I'm sorry. I want everybody to perhaps not have to deal with things like depression because perhaps deep down these things they're actually kind of aware of it, but haven't thought about it because they actually distract themselves with the things because they don't have the ability to sit and think and it feeds the machine and yada yada. And I'm going to stop because I'm not trying to red pill you. So I'm having this conversation. And he's like, oh my gosh, I know. He's like, there is this female artist. She is considered just an icon, blah blah blah. And he's like, he's like, and I hope that you're not a fan. He's like, but my brother worked on their soundboard. He was a traveling drummer for a certain country artist, and yada yada. And that's all I'm gonna say about it. Now with crossovers and whatnot, you can't necessarily know. So, and so we ended up working soundboard and working a touring for years. Worked with this artist when they were not quite the global phenomenon they are now, but up and coming when they were first getting started. And they were speaking about how they were just she was one of the most horrible people to work with, that she was just awful to people, and that she is just a complete product of the machine and what they tell her to do, and it's all mass marketing, and that's why she's America's sweetheart, and can be perceived as one of America's sweethearts, I should say, because there are a few, right? It could be anybody. Could be Courtney Love. No. I don't know that anybody would perceive Courtney Love as America's sweetheart, but don't get me started on Courtney Love. I think, yet again, that's just an example of the patriarchy trying to pose anger toward women. I might lose, some of my followers on that one, and sorry for that, but I just think it's really funny that he had other band members, and certain band members were just like super vocal about like even the Ticketmaster, what have you, and being sellouts and whatnot. And I get it, we grow up and we change, but then goes on and has success and loses other bandmates, and sounds Faustian to me. Just saying. Oh my gosh, my neck's just cracked. That's probably karma because the Lord confirmed. I don't know if you're my neck crack, and it's not just because I'm old. It's because I mentioned getting hit by the car, and then I've had an amazing life, and sometimes have treated my body like, well, like it's gonna go back to the ground one day, and like I'm absolutely okay with that because it's about making an impact on how we show up. So it wasn't just that vindication, mind you. So then I'm just doing my happy little thing, and I'm at the library, and because I see things so differently, like you will never understand. I love making connections with people, but then I also get so worried that I'm just going to freak people out. Or I'm worried that I'm just going to be, like a thief of joy. I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum, but because of the way that some people are, and they can't necessarily understand that they can't find it as yummy as they think they do if they can't have a balanced, realistic, and like a reasonable space. Like I guess in these particular instances, what have you, peopling. I try to be very vague with my language and keep it open for interpretation because people aren't going to necessarily understand anyway. So like, feel free to ask questions or take from it what you will. This journey, as I continue to grow and learn more, it's insane and it's so beautiful. So I'm at the library doing my thing, and just make a conversation and lock eyes with a person there, and just we start chatting. And this person is of European and Midwestern origins, that is to say, a pale persuasion, and I'm not. And I was checking out books on racism and racial equality, and I was like, oh, do you have any fun plans for your weekend? And they were talking about one of the like local good old boy Homestead Pioneer Day type festivals that we have. And I said, I'm not trying to make it. I hope you have a fantastic time. I was like, that one was a struggle for me as a parent. Like taking my child, one of my children there for the first time because, their father is a native son of the particular place that I'm at. So part of their ancestry is definitely that. They're settlers. But then part of their ancestry, on my side, if we were to reenact that, especially like the indigenous parts of me, I'd possibly be like tied to a tree or something. And I'm not wanting to make anybody uncomfortable per se, but it's not necessarily any better than someone in like the glorious South reenacting the Civil War. The defend against, the traitorous North. And it's, again, it's not that anybody's inherently trying to be insensitive, but if we're trying to be mindful of sensitivities, we should be open to that. Now, rest assured, there are plenty of people that I've encountered, and if you were to talk to them and be like, oh yeah, this girl, blah, 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 they might be like, I know her, and she didn't try to respect my sensibilities and my boundaries and yada yada. I would say that is real for them. And I don't want to try and deny them their experience. I tell you, you feel free to ask me, because I feel like I respected it in multiple ways. In fact, and I'd be willing to unpack that. They also have things that make them feel that way too, but I'll let you be the judge if you're so inclined, or we can agree to disagree. But, why is it just any one thing? It's really neat, too, because then I got to, outside of this, and this dialogue went really well, because then this person's like, oh my gosh, it's really interesting that you say that. I've kind of struggled with that, and then we just went kind of sideways. And I got more vindication, just about a particular business in my part of the world that I live in that I don't necessarily think is good business practices, and part of the culture here is that a lot of people will just, oh, this place is so great and yada yada. And it actually, funnily enough, came up at the car dealership too, to where it was nice to kind of, because I have some experience with this particular place of business just from employees that have worked there in different ways, having been a patron of this particular business, happening to see some of the artists that they support, just the incestuous nature and elbow rubbing within this very small big town. And it's interesting because there are so many incredible people in this town, and hell, all of them are, even the ones I don't like, even the ones I don't agree with, although there are also some incredibly interesting things in this town. Actually, even there's another business that I used to frequent quite frequently, funnily enough, and I don't know, it's part of your stance and your choices. And I used to love this place. Like, I used to go sing karaoke. I used to go see so many different shows there. But at the same time, there's just hypocrisy. Like, they have a sign on the wall that states, no homophobia, no racism, what have you. And while I wouldn't go so far as to say I have seen overt energies, like, in your face expressed there, I can definitely say that I've seen things that if I were to really sit and think on it and question and make like a pros and cons list, while it would be back and forth, it might tip to a certain scale of them actually, funnily enough, supporting some of the things that they would claim not to. And more importantly, there is a very interesting event. I don't want to say interesting, it's macabre, and they were more than likely not necessarily involved, but they were one of the last places that a missing person was seen. And as I kind of explored my town a little bit and actually gotten to know people that frequented this place in just different facets, the different things I've heard, there's a lot. People. And I went really, really sideways with that. So agree to disagree. Be careful out there. One thing I will say, first and foremost, is we all are responsible for protecting ourselves. But I guess, I don't know. So the spirit moves. That must have compelled me, just because you don't necessarily know what you don't know, even about the people that you think you know. And yeah, that's why it's really important to just kind of show up and love ourselves and, just learn to even hold space, to try to understand, because it's not that simple, just any of it. And now more than ever, in these times where it's very easy to choose to disconnect or just connect what we're doing, just the energies, everything that's running rampant right now. How we do what we do is so important. And yeah, I went totally sideways here for a second, and I'm so sorry. It's just, I got kind of distracted as I just kind of started thinking just about some of these things and just even more of the choices that I'm going to have to make. Like I say, my mind is always going 10 steps ahead, and you got to kind of see it in real time. So, this is why also, hopefully, just why I talk about myself. I understand that it could come off as like so narcissistic, like, oh, look at me. But it's more like just owning it. Like, I'm freaking weird, man. And we all feel weird in our own ways. Like, we all just do our different things. And it's there's so many people that are trying to tell you what to think or how to think, and I'm not. I'm sharing with you and sharing what I think and what I feel and observe in my experience, just so that hopefully it resonates with you, because we all are all in this together. And I mentioned some of the other survivor things, but interestingly enough, I have autoimmune health issues as well. So, every day it's a gift. It's my time is precious. And so I want to make sure that while I'm here, what butterfly effect, what's to say what you can do, what you will do, what you're going to do, because you're amazing. You're so much cooler than I am, and you're probably so much more passable and less normal. It's not even about me. So agree to disagree. How are you going to change the world? Because you're amazing, and I love you, and I don't have to know you to love you. I believe in you, because trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. I'm loving you this day and always, and happy solar eclipse. Mwah!